It's the double nugget. I mean, like the bitter berries. I do have a number of fantasy teams called the bitter berries, but just basically a double negative.
That's my goal for 2021 is to develop better fantasy team names. Because I just call mine all Yaters can Yates. It's cute and witty, but like I feel like I can expand my horizon.
Yeah, it's a little safe. It's a little redundant. Yeah. A little kind of like been there, done that.
Right. Irish Twins also going strong in the War Room League.
That is true.
All right, let's get to our Thursday night football.
But you have an Irish twin in that you're co-manager. The intrepid Matt Harrington, who is the producer of this show and Fantasy Football Now. We love Matt Harrington.
Can I tell you real quickly that my favorite team name is TMR Sets My Lineup? Because if I won, everyone's just like, of course Matthew Berry sets your lineup in your fantasy league. But then if the team sucks, it's like, it's Matthew's fault.
Wow. Exactly.
Can I borrow that next year?
I wish I thought of that.
Absolutely. Go, just yell at me on Twitter.
There is a direct
Join the crowd. I had a lot of that last night.
The Thursday Night Football recap is brought to you by Geico. Whether you rent or own, Geico makes it easy to bundle home and car insurance. Having a home is hard work, so get a quote at geico.com. Easy. Much like the Colts made it look late in this game last night, on special teams specifically, as the Colts win 31-17 over the Titans. We're going to start with Tennessee, and then we get to Colts. I have a little bit of a thought on Indy in just a moment, but Ryan Tannehill, for the first time in 12 home games, does not throw multiple touchdowns. This Colts defense is legit.
The Colts defense is absolutely legit, but he easily could have, right? He easily.
A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown, fantasy managers across the country tilting on that one particular play. So, I think A.J. Brown's day looks a lot different, obviously, as does Ryan Tannehill's, if A.J. Brown catches that ball and goes to the house, as we've seen him do so many times.
Yeah, I would say so. That's definitely fair. That being said, we could probably do that frequently with players, right? Like one run where you get one more block and the player's gone for 70 yards. The bottom line is that Ryan Tannehill, who at one point, I think we jinxed him because we had a conversation probably like 6 weeks ago saying why don't we call Ryan Tannehill a lock-it-in starter every single week? And then he came back down to earth over the past 4 straight games, under 17.5 fantasy points. Not that any of us believed that last night would be a huge night for Ryan Tannehill, but he sort of settled as to maybe like a mid-tier quarterback to maybe a high-end QB2 as opposed to a start him every week QB1.
I have a slightly different position on Ryan Tannehill. I really like him. I'm a big fan. I'm a believer. I'm a believer in Arthur Smith's offense. I'm a believer in what they're building in Tennessee. This was a tough game. This is a tough game on a short week against a very good defense, one of the best defenses in the NFL. Okay, and again, had that A.J. Brown play happen, and I get it. You can say that you could, woulda, coulda, shoulda for almost any game. I get that, but the fact is that it would have been a little bit better. So here's his next 2 games: at Baltimore, at Indy. Okay, those are obviously very tough matchups. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to continue to struggle next couple of weeks, but look at his schedule after that field. Cleveland, Jacksonville, Detroit, Green Bay in Week 16, and then Houston in Week 17 if you play here on ESPN. I think in 2 weeks, Ryan Tannehill is going to be an awesome buy low. If you know you're going to make the playoffs, Ryan Tannehill, to me, is a target to grab over these next couple of weeks when he's struggling, because I think he's going to finish the season really strong.
Oh, by the way, you better do it now, because the ESPN.com fantasy trade deadline on default settings, November 25th at noon Eastern time. That's 2 weeks ago from this past Wednesday.
So, duly noted. So I'm just saying, he'll struggle next week against the Ravens, then you make the trade for him. You deal with him against the Colts the week after that, and then he's going to be awesome.
Derrick Henry was fine last night. He was fine, 11.9 fantasy points, and the Titans had a 3-play stretch from the 1-yard line. They had a 1-yard loss from Derrick Henry, then a 2-yard, from the 2-yard line, they had a pass interference or holding call. So they get the ball back at the 1-yard line, and they run a little sort of jet sweep with Jonnu Smith. Derrick Henry misses a touchdown on that drive. I would say that 7 or 8 out of 10 times he scores that. No issue with Derrick Henry from last night. But A.J. Brown was quiet. You mentioned that one big play that goes awry, Matthew, but 1 catch, 21 yards in total. I believe it was his first game this season without scoring a touchdown. Came back down to earth a bit last night.
He didn't score one in week 1, I don't believe, against the.
Okay, but bottom line, it's been a long time.
It's been, but once he came back in week 5. Touchdowns in 5 straight games, 6 touchdowns in 5 games, and he scored in every single game. Yep. Yeah, whatever. He had a bad game. It is what it is. It happens. If you are bailing, if anyone out there in any of my leagues is bailing on A.J. Brown, please give me a call. I'm all in. Again, I just talked about it. Their schedule down the stretch is ridiculous. Like the next 2 weeks are tough, and then it's awesome. Give me all the A.J. Brown. I'm not worried about last night.
Mike Clay noted on yesterday's show just how stingy Indy has been against opposing tight ends. So Jonnu Smith helps his day with that 1-yard rushing touchdown, but otherwise just 2 catches for 14 yards. Quiet day for Jonnu. Let's get to the Colts here.
Jonnu's been quiet for a while, by the way. Jonnu is touchdown. Jonnu is now, before I think Jonnu was in kind of that lock it in,
right.
Like he would tight end one tier, and I think Jonnu is now like touchdown dependent tight end. He's now in a much larger tier of like.
Do me a favor.
Yeah.
Name a tight end, not name Travis Kelce or George Kittle.
T.J. Hawkinson.
It's a bad one. Just name something. He has been sort of quiet, but he's been quiet for a while. You said he's been quiet for a while about Jonnu Smith, like basically.
Oh, they all are. I thought you were asking like
Kelce.
name a. I was trying to name a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like no, they all are. Like
they're
whatever.
All
like
quiet right now, right?
Right. I mean, whatever. You know. Yeah. I mean, you know,
Dallas
Goedert, Jared Cook, like whatever. Yeah, I mean, whatever.
Tough times right now on tight end market to find somebody.
Noah Fant had a up and down year. Austin Hooper coming back, he's been good.
He has been good. Let's get to the Colts here for a second and talk about the backfield first. But, actually, we don't have Phillip Rivers.
Robert Tonyan hadn't done anything in like a month.
That's right. I just want to say quickly on Phillip Rivers, not a fantasy thing, but I think Phillip Rivers has become too easy of a target for us because if you look closely at how the Colts have played this year, Phillip Rivers has been very, very sharp in 6 games that they have won. Now, Phillip Rivers has these moments that are very gifable and very made for the internet that make him an easy target, right? He's also the kind of guy that does not care a bit what we have to say. But I think Phillip Rivers has played better. And I believe the Colts feel a lot better about Phillip Rivers' play than you might believe based off how he has been analyzed through the first 9 games of this season.
Well, here's the other thing I will say, is that I believe, and you know this better than I do, Field, having worked in front offices in the NFL, but my belief is that beyond just the on-the-field play, which is what all of people like us focus on, and whatever. And you see the moment of like him trying to tackle from the ground where the Ravens run it back.
Made for the
you
internet.
get it right, exactly. You see all those things. But my belief is a guy like Phillip Rivers, who is, a borderline Hall of Fame candidate, a guy that is accomplished. But somebody who is incredibly accomplished over his career. There is a level of professionalism and leadership that he brings to that locker room, to that team. And no disrespect to Jacoby Brissett, but there's a gravitas to Phillip Rivers that just Jacoby Brissett doesn't have at this point in his career. And so once Andrew Luck decides to retire, and there's kind of a void at that leadership position on the team, bringing in somebody like Phillip Rivers outside of the football, I think helps that franchise, a team that wants to go to the Super Bowl, that has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. Having a guy that has sort of been there, done that the way that Rivers has, I think helps the team and the organization.
So yesterday on the show, agreed on all that. Yesterday on the show, Mike Clay had a passing phrase at the end of our analysis about the Colts running backs, like, watch Nyheim Hines catch 2 touchdowns tonight. Well, he was close. He caught one and he ran for one as well. I have decided to recalibrate my analysis on the Colts running backs.
Okay.
So the argument against Nyheim Hines is that on a given night, he could score 2 touchdowns, which he has done 3 times this year.
Yes.
Second only to Dalvin Cook amongst players in the NFL this year.
Sure.
Okay? However, he could also give you like 4 total touches. Remember, last week, I believe he had just 1 touch in the final 3 quarters. And so that will be the argument against him. You know what? The argument for Nyheim Hines is now stronger than the argument for Jonathan Taylor and Jordan Wilkins. If I'm playing a Colts running back going forward, based off what we've seen from the bad of Jonathan Taylor and Jordan Wilkins and the occasional good from Nyheim Hines, I'd rather roll those dice.
I think that's fair. Here's a guy that's gotten 5 or more targets in 3 of the past 4 games. And we think about what Phillip Rivers likes to do. He does like to dump the ball off. And because he's the passing down back, he's going to be involved at least somewhat. And we've seen this from Frank Reich. Like, Frank Reich's like, all right, you 3 go out there. Let me see what we got. And I'm going to go with a hot hand. And last night, it was Nyheim Hines. And so Nyheim Hines is, based on the way they run their offense and the way that Phillip Rivers plays the position, has as good a chance, if not better than the other guys, to get off to a hot start because of the kind of plays that he runs and because of the kind of offense that they run. I'm with you. I do think and I think you were sort of getting here, with Nyheim Hines, if he is, based on who else you have on your roster, it's one of those that I think you just have to basically say, like, I'm either starting Nyheim Hines every week or I'm not. Because to your point, it's very feast or famine with him, and trying to be able to predict when he's going to have a game like he did last night where he has the 2 touchdown game. You're just not going to be able to do it. So you either just have to say, like, I'm in on Nyheim Hines and I'll take a couple of the 6-point games because I'm going to get a couple of big games, or you're just out. You have to. You're going to drive yourself crazy trying to pick those weeks.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like the feast or famine of Nyheim Hines outpaces the steady volume of Jonathan Taylor. Right?
Jonathan Taylor's been brutal. I mean, he made the hate list this week.
Nice call.
And thank you very much. And I'm going to move off of love hate. I'm going to save my job for one more day and just say, trust me, he was on the hate list. And because I know it got posted late last night, so you may not have gotten a chance to read it. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor has been really tough. Like, you know, he's had under 12 carries now for 5 straight games. Like you know, he just has not been able to emerge from that three-headed running back by committee. They like, you know, and it was interesting because like they you know, you talked about some sequences, right? Like they gave towards the end of the game when they were trying to sort of run at the clock, Jordan Wilkins was in there, not Jonathan Taylor, and they gave Jonathan Taylor a goal line run, he didn't convert. Then they brought in Jordan Wilkins, gave him one, he didn't convert either.
Yeah.
You know
their 2 rushing touchdowns were?
Yeah.
Jacoby Brissett
and Nyheim Hines. Yeah.
Anyways, I don't think we need to belabor it anymore. The point is, right now, if you're playing a Colts running back, you're chasing the upside of Nyheim Hines.
Yes, but I don't think you can start Jonathan Taylor until you see it.
Of course not. Anybody who thinks otherwise is either, I don't know, maybe they have only Jonathan Taylor on their roster. Michael Pittman is the only Colts pass catcher that really sort of moves the needle for me right now, because of what we saw last night. And he got healthy a couple weeks ago. Played last week, had 5 catches. Last night, he had 7 catches for over 100 yards. And this is the eye test thing, right? Like Michael Pittman looks like the most explosive, best pass catcher that the Colts have right now.
Looked the part.
Yeah. I write the waiver wire column each week for ESPN, and I start the column after Thursday night's game. I just start to put some notes in. And I mentioned Michael Pittman is kind of the waiver ad that I'm looking for at this time of the year, because there's sort of 2 that you can find. 3. 1 is a streamer, but because of COVID this year, rosters are bigger and there's a lot less streaming than previous years. 2 is an injury situation. We don't want to write about injury situations leading to somebody else getting opportunities. 3 is a guy who, for whatever reason, was held back during the first half of his season, but he's an ascending player. Michael Pittman, ascending player, a guy that will be on the waiver wire column prominently next week. All right, let's get to some injury updates, but before we do that, we have to give you the COVID updates. And Stephania, AFC North has 2 teams dealing with situations, including a very recent one from the Browns this morning.
Yes, we just found out this morning the Browns have closed their facility today after a positive test for a player. And so we stand by and we'll wait to hear more. Everything will be conducted virtually today. The other team you're referring to, Pittsburgh Steelers, because Ben Roethlisberger was a high-risk close contact as determined by his contact with tight end Vance McDonald, who tested positive. So he has been away from the facility the entire week. Now, Mike Tomlin said he's been working virtually. This is not unusual, by the way, because Ben Roethlisberger takes Wednesdays off. That's part of managing his workload. So it's not like he's missing a ton of practice. They feel like he's very engaged and he could easily step in if he remains negative as far as his testing and is able to return on Sunday.
Yeah, the Lions were a bit more evasive last week in deciding whether Matthew Stafford would play, assuming he continued to test negative. Obviously, he did play. The Steelers have been saying, hey, he's playing if he's good to go, and we expect him to be good to go on Sunday against the Bengals. All right, let's get to the injury updates, Stephania, and there are a lot this week.
I will say, just for, you know, I'm in a crazy deep super flex deep league where like it's 30-man rosters. I picked up Mason Rudolph just in case. Like it's one of those where there's like that Alex Smith has been rostered for a month in that league. I mean, it's one of those kind of leagues. And so, but just anyway, because I do think that if for some reason Ben were to miss, in the craziest, deepest of leagues, Mason Rudolph could be okay against the Bengals.
So it's been a while since we've had some clarity on the Joe Mixon injury status, to the point that our Bengals reporter, Ben Baby, have you seen this, Stephania?
Yeah, no, I was going to say this poor guy.
Yeah,
this is the bane of his existence, is responding to all the Twitter questions about Joe Mixon. He basically wrote something like, yes, I was hired to give you updates for your
beyond that,
team.
he changed his name on Twitter to Joe Mixon account update account. So
that I missed.
_baby. Go give him a follow if you like fantasy football. If you like the Bengals, does a really good job for us here at ESPN, Stephania. So,
by the way, his latest update on Joe Mixon came, I think, at 4:30 this morning.
Yes,
I mean, he is just getting ahead of it because everyone's asking. So let me tell you what he provided. Yesterday, you should follow him just for his tweets about Joe Mixon. He was talking about what he did and how he had to swerve behind a truck. And I mean, he was making it up. But basically, it was to get there so he could photograph Joe Mixon standing on the sideline during practice yesterday. Joe Mixon has not participated in practice. He's either been working on the side with a member of the rehab staff or doing individual things, but he has not yet participated. So bottom line, doesn't look like he's going to be available this week either.
Plan for Giovanni Bernard then, of course. And Matthew, he's been sort of an RB2 consideration when he has been on the field in place of Joe Mixon. Sounds like that's going to be the case again this Sunday. I've got him as a top 20 option.
As do I. I mean, look, I get it. It is a tough matchup with the Steelers, but he's so involved in the passing game. We expect the Steelers offense to be successful against Cincinnati, and so they're going to be trailing here. Remember that since Joe Mixon got hurt, he's the third best running back in fantasy on a points-per-game basis. 18 touches and at least one touchdown in both the games that he's filled in for Joe Mixon. He, again, so involved in the passing game in what we expect to be a high-scoring game. Yes, I have Giovanni Bernard actually at running back 14 this week.
You'll notice on the screen, for those that are watching, Daniel's ranking is 47 for Bernard. He either really dislikes Giovanni Bernard or there's more to it.
No, it's just the idea as I was preparing for the show and getting things around last night, I was sort of doing some of these things. So with Joe Mixon out, he'll move up along with everybody else. I've been waiting for them to be ruled out before I move people up, but obviously Giovanni Bernard will be a top 20 play for me if Joe Mixon definitely misses time.
I'll just tag on to that just to say that it's always a challenge for any of us, and I suspect this is the case for everyone that does rankings in the fantasy industry, but I'll speak merely just for us here at ESPN. It's always a challenge when you see a situation like this. You can either say, like, I'm not going to rank Joe Mixon, and if we know he's going to play, I'm going to do it, or you're like Daniel, you're like, I'm going to rank Joe as if Joe Mixon's going to be playing, and when I find out that he's not, then I can adjust my ranks. And it's always a struggle when you're ranking to basically to do situations like this. Because obviously, if Daniel knew Joe Mixon was out, obviously Giovanni Bernard's not running back 47 for him. And by the way, if I thought there was a chance Joe Mixon was playing, obviously Giovanni Bernard is not running back 14 for me. So it's always a challenge for any of us that do rankings. And so I just bring that up for people listening at home. When you are looking at the rankings, just understand that. And the rankings get updated throughout the weekend. We update them literally from the set of Fantasy Football Now after the inactives come out. So always just, if you use our rankings to influence your lineup decisions, just understand it's always fluid. And I feel like the best time to look at them is over the weekend. Once the Friday practice reports have come out, we have a much better sense of who's going to play and who isn't on Sunday.
We always say check the rankings. We mean check the rankings a lot because they're updated frequently. Stephania, let's move forward here to Seattle. And remember when Chris Carson was like, he was maybe saying he had a chance to play after missing no time at all due to a mid-foot sprain. Where are we at now?
Still not practicing. And Pete Carroll is always upbeat and optimistic about his star players, but he's tempered his expectations around his running backs of late, although he did say he hoped to get them back in practice this week, and so far Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde have not practiced. I will say that both Travis Homer and DJ Dallas, despite both of them also appearing on the injury report, have put in full practices, and both should be available this weekend.
Okay. Hey, Stephania, quick question here. How happy are you on this kind of stuff? Just like you, I know you. Hey, hang on. Hear me out. Stephania never wants a player to be injured. I want to be very clear about that. Stephania gets really upset anytime she sees a player get injured. So I want to be really clear on that. But I will just say that when Chris Carson's injury happened, Stephania on that Monday show said, boy, that's a mid-foot sprain. And everyone was saying, like, he came back the following week of the leg injury. He's so tough. Pete Carroll expressing optimism. And Stephania was just like, I don't know. I would be very surprised if he plays this week. I think this is a multi-week injury. And I'm just saying he's on track to miss his third straight week. So I just want to give a little bit of props here to Stephania Bell, who called that from moment one. I know a lot of other people were saying, no, not a big deal, despite what was coming out of the team. And so obviously you're not happy that Chris Carson may miss a third straight week, but I just want to give you some props because you nailed that injury from moment one when a lot of other people were saying opposite. So
that's very nice of you. What I would point out, though, is that what does make me happy is when I think a player has an injury like this and they miss more the amount of time that you think is consistent with getting fully healthy. Because not only does it help them when they come back, but it helps for fantasy purposes, right? If Joe Mixon was coming back to play and his foot, by the way, there's another foot injury that has cost multiple weeks. And these guys weren't ready to play. They could be in for not even a full series and then go out with another injury. So while it frustrates fantasy managers, understand that you're better off getting a player back who looks like Christian McCaffrey when he returned from a lower extremity injury than somebody coming back and not being 100%.
All right, so if Chris Carson does not play on Sunday, and it sounds like there's a very good chance he will not play on Sunday, we turn to DJ Dallas and Travis Homer, as Stephania just mentioned a moment ago. It's been 2 games with these guys as the 2 most involved running backs in Seattle. Seems pretty clear that DJ Dallas is probably, in the best case scenario, the guy you want to start. Travis Homer involved in the passing game last week, but Dallas has the edge over Homer.
Yeah, but I think it's a 60-40, 55-45. They prefer, if you're in PPR, you prefer Dallas to Homer, but I think it's more of a split. The first week they split, remember, Homer had been dealing with that knee injury the entire week. Last week he was more healthy, so I think it's going to be more of a split. But yes, I'll have Dallas over Homer, assuming Carson misses, because of Dallas's involvement in the passing game. They like him a little bit more.
If I were to give you a ranking, a power ranking of the head coaches that give us the most information on injuries, it will be Sean McVay of the Rams. Stephania, he has been transparent about both Darrell Henderson and Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, the only time he wasn't so far this year was Tyler Higbee, but we'll let that one slide. But Darrell Henderson dealing with a quad injury, and I think Sean McVay's words when he was speaking to the reporters this week was that he expects the big guy to get back. So he did get some work in Thursday, and Sean McVay says he expects him to be able to play on Sunday. Cooper Kupp, also on the injury report, might have gone unnoticed, dealing with a wrist issue and an oblique. He was limited in yesterday's practice. It's the oblique injury that is limiting him. McVay said he's hopeful that he'll be able to play Sunday, but it sounds like he could come in as questionable this week.
Really interesting there. So all good on Darrell Henderson. Josh Reynolds, though, on the radar if something happens. We talked about Cooper Kupp being one of 4 wide receivers that have top 10 upside this week in this game. Josh Reynolds, very much available in leagues. If something happens where Cooper Kupp's not available, Josh Reynolds, one of the best last-minute wide receiver adds this weekend.
No, I agree on Josh Reynolds, but who's the other guy? I haven't heard of the other guy.
Matthew's little Cooper Kupp.
Ah, that guy. Now I recognize him. That's right. My little Cooper Kupp. Look, in addition to being a great matchup with Seattle just in general because that secondary struggles so much, they're brutal against the slot. My little Cooper Kupp actually made the love list this week. Right, you see him if you're watching the video, you see this. I'm at number 6 this week. I expect him to play, and I expect him to play very, very well in a great matchup against the Seahawks. It should be a high-scoring game.
All right, Stephania, the Eagles and Giants, one team getting a running back, the other maybe not having one again. What can you tell us? Started with Miles Sanders.
Yeah, Miles Sanders looks to be coming back this week. We got a full day of practice from him. The bye seems to have done him a lot of favors, so I think Miles Sanders will be back in your lineup. Devontae Freeman walked off the field yesterday from practice with a member of the rehab staff. Not good, as they were trying to increase his workload, so while the Giants were doing team drills, he was leaving.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe no Devontae Freeman again means more of Wayne Gallman, who's been solid for the Giants. Not spectacular, but solid, sort of a low-end RB2, maybe flex consideration in your lineup.
I just like the pause before the word solid, that who's been, field goes through his mind, what's the word I can say here about Wayne Gallman? Pedestrian, mediocre, fine, okay.
I'm saving those for David Montgomery, who's coming up next.
Been solid is what he's been. By the way, you know who else has been solid? Alfred Morris. Yeah. I mean, whatever. They're using a little Deion Lewis, a little Alfred Morris. Like Alfred Morris is getting used a lot more than I think any of us expected. So and weirdly limiting Wayne Gallman's upside to the extent that Wayne Gallman has upside. None of that, they're all flexes. They're all flexes with Gallman being the head of that.
David Montgomery, Stephania, they play on Monday night, of course, on ESPN. So we don't know specifically what the Bears practice report is going to look like by the time the rest of the team practice reports are out. But what's the early read on David Montgomery?
Well, he did not practice. So the first practice report of the week, he was not practicing. And, he was in the concussion protocol after an injury late in last week's game. One thing that surprised me, I found interesting, is that he has not missed a game. This is a reminder that so far in his career, has not missed a game. He's played 25 straight. He had that groin injury in the preseason. Obviously, a couple more days, and we should know more.
Okay.
I mean, he's missed plenty of games. He's been active,
yes.
But I mean, he's missed plenty of games, Stephania. But in terms of, did he show up in the box score? Yeah, sure, his name was listed.
Here's my suggestion, is if you have to replace David Montgomery, it starts to lean that way, I'd replace him on Sunday if you can. Because I don't know that there's a great Bears option, whether it's Cordarrelle Patterson. Wouldn't surprise me if they promoted Lamar Miller on Monday, if need be, from the practice squad to the active roster. If you can find somebody who's not a Chicago Bear to fill in for David Montgomery, I do so.
I would agree with that. I think it'll be some Cordarrelle Patterson, Ryan Nall as well. Maybe they'll activate Lamar Miller. Question for you, NFL insider Field Yates. if for the Monday night game, if they need to activate somebody from the practice squad, they can do it on Monday.
Sure can.
Because usually it's Saturday for teams playing Sunday, of course. But the Bears could activate someone on Monday to play Monday night.
You can actually activate somebody on Sunday if you need to. If someone tests positive, you can bring someone up from the practice squad on Sunday. So we haven't seen it frequently. The Bears did it last week, but not in a different scenario. But yes, David Montgomery, the news will go all the way up until Monday, potentially, if they have to promote someone from the practice squad. Another player dealing with a concussion, Stephania, is David Johnson.
Yes, and not practicing either at all. And it sounds like the rumblings are that he could miss this weekend's game.
Expected to miss this game, which means from one D. Johnson to another D. Johnson. That would be Duke Johnson, of course, the former Cleveland Brown. Little revenge game here, Matthew. Solid player. Never been much of a workhorse consistently, but has a chance to be one for the second straight week.
It's a good matchup with Cleveland. I mean, not a great matchup, actually. I mean, Cleveland's actually been pretty good against running backs, but it's not one that scares you. You mentioned the revenge game here. They got no one else. I mean, they got a couple of practice squad guys, but no one that you have heard of or that you'd be particularly worried about taking significant work away from Duke Johnson. I mean, he got all of the running back touches. He got 20 different touches once David Johnson left that game last week. My expectation here is a heavy workload as the starting running back for a good offense. I mean, the Texans have their struggles as a team, obviously, but that's on the defensive side. They can score points, and I believe they will against the Browns. Again, assuming this game gets played, we're waiting to find out if there's any news there, as we talked about earlier in the show.
One more, Stephania. We'll talk about this game.
I should just wrap this up and say I have Duke Johnson at running back 13. Like I'm as a high-end RB2 this week, assuming that game plays.
Stephania, one more injury here. Is Kenny Golladay for the Lions, who missed last week and has been absent for quite some time now on the practice field.
Not practicing at all. So I would just plan on no Kenny Golladay available this week either.
Marvin Jones back to being a top 30 consideration. Not quite the matchup it was. Well, not a terrible matchup. We thought last week was a really good matchup for Marvin Jones. He found the end zone, plays against Matthew's Washington football team.
It's not a terrible matchup, but you know what it is? It's not a great matchup. Do you know over the last 4 weeks who the number one pass defense in the NFL is?
With the way that you led that question, I'm going to go with the Washington football team.
It's the Washington professional football team. Now, some of that, of course, is because they get into sort of these low-scoring games. Some of this is based on who they've played, and some of it's based on the fact that teams haven't needed to. They haven't needed to throw against Washington because they're not down big against them. Washington turns the ball over and they get them in short. But the fact is, so there's a variety of reasons and caveats as to why. But the fact is that the Washington defense and their secondary has statistically played well, especially over the last 4 weeks. No team has given up less passing yards per game than Washington over the last 4 weeks. And so Marvin Jones, who's been very pedestrian, while filling in for Kenny Golladay, and Matthew Stafford's been inconsistent for me. If I'm starting a Detroit Lions pass catcher this week, it's TJ Hawkinson. Washington really struggles against tight ends, but they've actually been pretty good against wide receivers.
Well, better be careful there.
What?
TJ Hawkinson's hurt.
I know.
Toe injury. Kept him off the practice field yesterday. I don't know if Stephania knows anything else there, but sounds like there's a chance he won't be available on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, this was a bit of a surprise. So, yes, Detroit doesn't ever tell us much. Wait and see, but not practicing yesterday.
But just putting that on people's radars, again, it's impossible to find tight ends. No Travis Kelce this week. No George Kittle. Potentially no TJ Hawkinson.
If Hawkinson's active, I'm starting him. And like I'm saying, I think I wouldn't be like, oh, wow, Marvin Jones, no Kenny Golladay. I just don't think he has a monster game. Anything's possible, but I don't, based on what we've seen out of both Washington secondary and Marvin Jones without Kenny Golladay, he's a wide receiver 3.
All right, Shell knows that between every tee-up, layup, and batter-up, that you can't wait to catch up with your favorite podcast. So come to Shell and get 3 things done at once. First, fill up with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus to help keep your engine running like new. Then save up with the Fuel Rewards program and never pay full price for gas again. And finally, snack up with in-store rewards to save even more at the pump. Oh, time to wrap it up. Make the most of the stop you need to make with Shell and engines that continuously use Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. See full terms and conditions at fuelrewards.com.
You know the pressure you feel heading into a fantasy draft?
Sure do.
You want to make sure you're picking the right guys to get the job done because whatever your strategy is, at the end of the day, it all comes down to who's on your team. What we really need is something like ZipRecruiter for fantasy football, which unfortunately they don't make yet. But ZipRecruiter in the real world makes hiring easier than ever. And right now, you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job sites, scanning thousands of applicants and actively inviting the most qualified candidates to apply. so you can hire the right people fast. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter find a quality candidate within the first day. Man, imagine if we had something like ZipRecruiter during our fantasy drafts. We'd never lose. Try ZipRecruiter for free today when you post your job at ZipRecruiter.com/06010. That's ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. 1 for 2.
3 straight.
It is 3 straight.
Talk about some committees and potential ways to sort through them in fantasy this weekend. We start in Cleveland. And by the way, a little bit of a weather alert now in Cleveland. It's supposed to be really wet Sunday morning. We'll see whether that rain carries over into kickoff at 1 p.m., but does not look particularly pretty for the forecast on Sunday morning. Let's move forward to a couple of backfields here. And in that Cleveland backfield, as we know, it's not just Kareem Hunt, as Stephania, Nick Chubb, as you've been talking about all week, expected to be back.
Yeah, he's looked good in practice from all the reports, the portions that are open to the media. Now, he's coming off the MCL injury from week 4. He had 4 weeks of rest plus the 5th week of the bye week for the Browns. And he came in, and Kevin Stefanski's been singing his praises. And the questions yesterday from reporters were whether Nick Chubb was going to wear a brace if he played. And Stefanski kind of backed up and said, let's just make sure he's going to be available first. It's a wait and see. We want to see how he looks Friday. We're going to consult with the medical staff. And if everything looks like a go, then we'll go. And the brace will be an issue of what the medical staff thinks and the comfort for Chubb. Everybody talked about yesterday how he looked good making quick cuts. These are the kind of things you look for after an MCL sprain. But here's the trick. We are told now that the facility is closed. So all these things that would contribute to the evaluation of Nick Chubb before the decision for Sunday's game aren't going to happen today. It'll be interesting to see how they handle this over the next 24 hours. But with so much weight being placed on what happened today, this now throws a bit of a wrench into it.
But if he does play, and let's evaluate this if he does play, Matthew, and we should have clarity one way or the other, certainly in plenty of time to make your decision on Sunday morning, we have both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt as viable options within our top 15 this week. As a matter of fact, Kareem Hunt also makes the love list.
He does indeed, because I think there are people that are like, boy, Nick Chubb's back. All right, what do I do with Kareem Hunt? And the answer is you start him. Like, stop thinking. Like, you start him, regardless of what Nick Chubb is. Now, I have Nick Chubb at 9. I have Kareem Hunt at 12 going into Friday afternoon. You love the matchup for both these guys, right? I mean, Houston, they allow the 3rd most running back fantasy points per game, right? They allow a league-high 144.9 rushing yards per game. They allow the 4th most yards per running back reception, which is another one of the reasons why I'm excited about Kareem Hunt in this matchup. You think about the first 3 weeks of the season, right? Weeks 1 through 3, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb were both active, fully healthy. Those 3 weeks, Chubb was the 8th best running back in fantasy. Great, right? Kareem Hunt was running back 13. They were both top 15 options weeks 1 through 4 with Chubb active. And again, he got hurt in week 4, but averaged over 17 fantasy points per game, averaged over 14 touches per game. You tell me Kareem Hunt's getting 14 touches in a game against the Texans? Kareem Hunt is a love, especially, by the way, maybe Nick Chubb isn't 100%, as you heard Stephania say, so maybe they ease him back in. He doesn't get a full workload here. And Field, you just mentioned the bad weather potentially in Cleveland. So what are you doing? You're handing it off. You're running the ball in wet, rainy, muddy conditions. You're running the ball or you're checking down to Kareem Hunt. So, yes, Kareem Hunt makes the love list. I'm as a top 12 play this week, regardless of whether Nick Chubb is active or not. I think both guys have big games against Houston.
So in the Broncos backfield, you're treating it as a little bit like sort of closer between both Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. Both Daniel and I in our rankings have Gordon sort of decisively ahead of Phillip Lindsay. The volume is a clear edge to Melvin Gordon. It appears that you are banking on just the more explosive plays from Phillip Lindsay.
Yeah, I think he's the better player. I mean, just to the eye test, right? I get it. The volume is there. To your point, right? Weeks 7 through 9, the last 3 weeks, yep. both players played in all 3 games. Weeks 7 through 9. Melvin Gordon had 40 touches over those 3 games. Phillip Lindsay had 24. So a significant difference in touches, and yet Melvin Gordon 154 total yards, Phillip Lindsay 188. They each had 1 touchdown. Melvin Gordon got the red zone and goal-to-go carries, but Lindsay is the more explosive player. To the eye test, he's just the better player. And so, right, I have Melvin Gordon ranked higher. I'm at 22, but I have Phillip Lindsay at 26. He made my others receiving votes list at the running back position in love-hate this week because I do think he is a viable flex play against a Raiders team that allows the 4th most fantasy points to opposing running backs.
I just think that the passing game usage for Melvin Gordon and the overall volume edge is why I continue to give him the lean. Feels like Phillip Lindsay is definitely the better player, might be a bit more touchdown dependent. Stephania, in the Arizona backfield, we have Kenyon Drake's possible return.
Yeah, I don't feel great about it so far, only because he's just put in limited practice sessions twice this week. Obviously, he was hurt in week 7. Week 8 was their bye, sat out week 9, and the Cardinals had said his injury was not as serious as they first feared, but I'd still want to see a full practice from him today before we feel good about him this weekend.
Okay, by the way, I'm checking Steve Keim, who is the Cardinals general manager, just a weekly radio segment. I'm trying to get a read on whether he said anything about Kenyon Drake in there. Nothing that I can see upon first blush, but Matthew, as we look at the possibility of Kenyon Drake playing, factoring in the context Stephania just gave us, again, we have Kenyon Drake out in front of Chase Edmonds, but once again, your rankings fairly close between these two, just 18 and 24.
Yeah, well, Stephania says, based on the fact that he's been in limited practice, she doesn't feel great about Kenyon Drake. No one feels great about Kenyon Drake. Doesn't matter about the injury.
Right.
The guy's been bad. Fantasy-wise, he's been a disappointment this year based on his ADP. He's been a significant disappointment. There have been 7 games together in which Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds have both played, right? Kenyon Drake, significantly more touches, right? 11 of the 14 goal-to-go touches. He has had a 119 to 29 carry edge. Significantly more touches for Kenyon Drake, and yet Chase Edmonds actually more fantasy points. Chase Edmonds been much more efficient. He's been the better running back fantasy-wise, and so I get it. There's who's got the better chance of scoring a touchdown if they're both playing? It's probably Kenyon Drake. Again, they've been giving it to him. Of the 14 goal-to-go touches when they've both been active, 11 of them have gone to Kenyon Drake. But I don't know. Chase Edmonds is their passing down back. They don't use Kenyon Drake as a passer in the passing game, really. And so in an offense that relies on passing, I mean, Kyler Murray's been nothing short of spectacular, and that offense is a very pass-first offense. The passing down back has a lot of value. So, yes, to your point, I have Kenyon Drake at 18, but I have Chase Edmonds at 24. I think Chase Edmonds, again, a very viable flex play in PPR leagues based on his passing game usage and the fact that Kenyon Drake hasn't been great all year long and doesn't sound like if he comes in this game less than 100% that you're excited about him against Buffalo, but middle of the pack against running backs.
Daniel?
Matthew, Field and I have Chase Edmonds at 23, and you have him at 24. I'm just curious why you hate Chase Edmonds so much when Field and I obviously
one of the most important questions of the week.
Yeah.
You know what? I think it's probably I should rethink that. I should rethink. I probably a little bit
Take
too low.
Take some time to
a little
consider
bit,
your error.
A little bit too low
on
Kenyon Drake. You have Kenyon Drake at 12. Field Yates.
That's crazy.
You love Kenyon Drake like you love Chapin. It's unbelievable.
Well, not quite that much.
Not quite that much, but it's close.
It's close. It's just not quite there. Yeah, no, but I am going to treat him like he will be a full-time player if he returns. I understand that Stephania has some worries, but right now, I have to treat him until told otherwise by the Cardinals.
But the lack of production you're not concerned with?
There are no running backs that get that. There are no running backs that get 20 touches in a game.
I mean,
he's getting 20 touches per game when he is healthy. Let's go to San Francisco, where they go to New Orleans this upcoming weekend in a rematch of some high-stakes games in previous years. Stephania, before we can get to the backfield, though, latest injury update specific to Tevin Coleman now.
Yeah, Tevin Coleman is expected to miss this week, but they do hope to have him back in Week 12. Week 11 is a bye week for the 49ers. We all know they could use one. By the way, I know that I follow 49ers things more closely than you all, but did you guys see what happened at their facility yesterday?
I did not.
They had a water main sewage break, and everyone was like, of course.
Of course.
Because it's the Niners right now.
Of course. Everything breaks.
Piling on.
Everything breaks around the Niners.
Yeah.
And Stephania, just real quickly, I think this is interesting because you mentioned they have the bye next week. They have the Week 11 bye. And so I saw Kyle Shanahan say that they expect to get Raheem Mostert and Deebo Samuel back after the Week 12 bye, after the Week 11 bye as well.
They're hoping to be much closer to full strength. Even Richard Sherman, who's been out for multiple weeks, dealing with a foot ankle injury, is hopeful to be back in Week 12. Was out practicing yesterday.
So without Tevin Coleman and, of course, that Raheem Mostert, all eyes turn to both Jerick McKinnon and JaMychal Hasty. And here we are again, Matthew. You got them sort of tightly bunched. You've got McKinnon at 27, Hasty at 34.
Yeah, and I would be lying to you guys if
Do you have any idea what's going on?
No, I got no idea. I have
Correct.
no clue. And here's what I will tell you. This is the part that I will tell you guys. And the reason this is why I have them close together, because not only do I have no clue what's going to happen with these guys, Kyle Shanahan has no clue.
Yep.
That's what I'm telling you is that it's not like we're not doing our analysis and that I'm just, I'm being lazy and being like, I'm not making a call. I am telling you right now that Kyle Shanahan is going into this game not knowing who's going to get the majority of the touches for his running back. I think he is truly a hot hand and sort of sees. I know people that are very close with Kyle Shanahan, right? And Kyle Shanahan has literally told them, this is the running back you should start. And they start that running back, and that running back gets 3 touches. And then the other guy got hot, and we just went that way. Honestly, it's a hot hand approach. So I have McKinnon at 27. I have Hasty at 34. We've seen 2 games with these guys. McKinnon got all the touches last week. The week before it was all Hasty. We just don't know. And so I have them both ranked outside the top 25 because there is risk there. But I have them close together because I certainly think it is very much within the realm of possibility that this becomes a JaMychal Hasty game. I know we all have short memories, and we think about last week when he's brutal. But 2 weeks ago, it was the JaMychal Hasty got into the end zone, and McKinnon didn't do anything. It is ideally a situation to avoid because there's just very little any predictive analysis you can make based on what they've done up to this point.
Yeah, and I give the edge to McKinnon because of A, it happened more recently with him, and B, the Saints are one of the best run defenses in football. They have not given up a 100-yard rusher in forever. Let's get to the most important game of the weekend, the Washington football team traveling to the Motor City to play Daniel's Detroit Lions. Let's talk about the backfield in D.C., Stephania, as Antonio Gibson would be higher ranked for us, but he's been banged up.
Well, he didn't practice on Wednesday. I think that's where people got nervous, but he was a full participant on Thursday. Ron Rivera said no issues, no concerns, and in fact was even talking about how he's made improvements in protection. So I think the way he was speaking about him was as if he is going to play.
Okay, well, it doesn't get any better than this matchup against Detroit, who's allowing a league-high 35 running back points per game in fantasy. We've got Gibson as basically a top 10 consideration this week. And J.D. McKissic also on the flex radar, as we've talked about a bunch recently. He just keeps finding ways to 10 or so points just as a receiver weekly. The Lions struggle to defend running backs not just as runners, but also as receivers as well.
They've given up an NFL high 5 receiving touchdowns to opposing running backs here. They also give up the 3rd most running back yards per carry, as you mentioned. Listen, Antonio Gibson has scored a rushing touchdown in 5 of the last 7 games, and you mentioned J.D. McKissic, right? I mean, J.D. McKissic is somebody that I think got 14 targets last week. I mean, something insane. Again, God bless Alex Smith. I've said this, comeback player of the year, name the award after him. He's not somebody that's chucking it deep. It's going to be a lot of dink and dunk. And so when you think about the pass catchers that he has available to him, some Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas, but it's going to be a lot of Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic in the passing game against Daniel's awful, pathetic Detroit Lions.
Wow.
I like J.D. McKissic as a top 20 play this week in PPR.
Wow, I cannot believe you just called Daniel's Lions awful and pathetic, because it is now time for the most important touchscreen that we will do throughout this season. As many of you know, Matthew is loyal to his Washington soil, and Daniel is a Lions fan through and through. So many of you have submitted tweets, and we're going to go through them right now. And we begin with basically what we're looking for is a wager. Daniel, Matthew, wager. If the Lions win, Daniel, Matthew must do this.
If the Lions win by more than 4.
Yeah, Lions get the point, or the Washington gets the point.
Right.
You are so generous.
Unlike Stephania Bell, who's very Weasley when it comes to bets,
right.
Daniel is graciously, I want to give Daniel credit here. Daniel's saying, yes, I will give you the point. So at the moment,
yes,
I believe
-4.
Lions are -4. So, yes.
Let's head to the touchscreen, and the first tweet comes from Colin, and Colin really speaks for the masses here, as he says, hey, if Washington wins, Daniel's got to shave his beard. Matthew shaves his head if the Lions win.
We had 7,000 of these tweets.
Right.
What?
Which makes total sense.
How do you shave a bald head?
Oh,
damn.
Wow. Okay, let's keep it moving here.
All right. You want to go through them, or you want to discuss each one?
Let's roll through them.
Roll through them. Next one here comes from Chris. Daniel Dopp has to wear a Bears jersey if he loses. Matthew Berry has to wear a Giants jersey if he loses.
This is insane, too. But by the way, Washington's big rival is Dallas. Like, that's the team that Washington hates more than anyone is Dallas.
Same idea, same concept.
Okay, I understand, but I'm just it's a weird one to pick.
So I picked that one because Kyle is a Packers fan, so obviously that's more the Lions rival than the Bears, I feel like. And same with the Giants, rather that Mike Clay, an Eagles fan, he could bring in an Eagles jersey for you to wear.
Yeah, sure. Or, I mean, honestly, listen, the NFLPA and Fanatics are great friends of the show. I'm sure we could call them, and I'm sure we could get a couple of jerseys here. You know what I mean? They've always been really good friends to the program. So that wouldn't be a problem, I think, if we wanted to do that one. If we wanted to do Cowboys, and who would you consider to me, Cowboys would be the big rival. That was
yes. I would say
I hate the Eagles and the Giants, but Packers.
Packers are definitely the Lions. For me, they're the biggest rival. Yeah.
Next submission,
we could do that one if that's on the list. All right.
Next submission comes from none other than Stephania Bell. Says whoever loses has to bring me Anfield Yates breakfast on Monday.
Clearly, this
always
is
the opportunist, huh?
Clearly, this is the best option.
Well, I will one-up that up because I don't even need breakfast. I just want a breakfast beer.
I love the way that feels.
Great wager, right? So that was my suggestion, my contribution to the program. Next one comes from Tillian, who has an idea.
Our buddy Tillian.
The loser.
Field wants breakfast.
Yeah, it was mine. I want breakfast beer. The next one comes from Tillian, who says, you know what? The loser has to bring back Maddie Exotic on Monday. Tillian, love you. Please, please, please don't let that happen.
Please no.
I am still, my ears still.
Yes, that feels like not a punishment for the loser of the bet. That feels like a punishment for the audience.
Yes, I agree.
And your coworkers.
Next submission comes from Gavin. He says, I don't have a bet idea for the Washington-Detroit game, but I think the game should be called The Forgettable.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's pretty clever. I wanted to include that. I thought that was really clever, Gavin. Appreciate that.
Nice job, Gavin.
All right, here we go. Next one comes from Stoney. Loser has to talk up the winner for a whole week. No negativity at all. Daniel could do that about Matthew.
Could do it.
Matthew could not do that about Daniel.
Because we'd have to have a punishment for when he failed to deliver on the bet.
Daniel is so
he would not be
good
able
and all
to do
these
it.
things. Meanwhile, of course I'm playing against Daniel. There's going to be some sort of pity party.
That would be a big one. That'd be a big
one. This one comes from Zach. The winner gets their pick of player from the other one's fantasy team in the 06-0-0 league. It's a player swap. Winner gets choice of who they want and gets to select 3 players on their team for the loser to pick from. This is actually a very, very utilitarian idea, I would say. Smart one.
We'd have to, like, Daniel, you and I play together in at least 3 leagues that I can think of, if not more.
Yep.
He said the 06-0-0 league.
Okay. Yeah.
We could do that. I'm in first place in that league. My team's cruising. If you want one of my guys, I don't mind giving. I mean, your team could use some help, so it's okay.
My team's like in third. What are you talking about? My team's like in third. My team's good.
Look at him go right to his phone.
I want to check the stand. I'm in 16 leagues, so I got to figure this out. But hang on.
Not only am I in first place, I've had Christian McCaffrey on my IR the entire season, Matthew.
Wow, you didn't even play him last week. Wow.
All right, what's the last one, Field Yates?
Yeah, I'm tied for first in my division in the and my team show violation in the 06-0-0.
Yes, correct.
Is me, Matt Harrington, and Not Cool Keith are all 5-4 in our division. We're all tied for first.
That's cool, and that's fine in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah,
but why don't you come on over to the West and see what the real big boys are?
It's the other way. You're 7-2.
Wow.
You're 7-2, beating up on like Field and Kyle, like you know what I mean? Like come over to like my division where like we got Stephania and Not Cool Keith and Harrington. Like
I believe
I
really crushed you.
All right, let's pick this real quick because we got a bunch more stuff we want to get to, but let's pick this so that we can have a good bet going.
I vote haircuts.
No, because Daniel would have to sacrifice so much more than Matthew.
The Lions are winning the game.
The weird part is I actually would do that because I need to go ball. I need to go fully bald at some point. Like, and it would be funny to do. Like, I need to do it at some point. But it took Daniel like that. I mean, that beard has been like. What was the last time you legit shaved?
2013.
Yeah, I mean, you can't ask a guy to give up 7 years of a.
Well, I've thought about doing it for the V Foundation. If like sometime if we do a thing like do a big like beard shaving thing
for
that.
Don't give it up
not for Matthew.
Not for the forgettable.
Yes.
I'm actually with you.
Agree. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You should not give.
He's already starting on the niceties of that the next.
Fine, we'll settle it.
Breakfast.
Breakfast for a month for Stephania and I.
Yeah. I think that's
Daniel,
about right.
It looks like you're going to have to decide it ourselves.
Yeah. I'm okay doing a player swap. You want to do a player swap? I think we pick 3 players
that we can protect.
Let's pick 2 players. Let's make it fun. We can pick 2 players that we can protect.
Okay.
Everybody else, you do a 1-for-1 swap. So, like, if you take a player.
You can't do a kicker for a quarterback or whatever. It got to be positional. And why don't we do it from our starting lineup?
Yes.
I mean, well, there might be some bye week guys.
Well, and CMC's not in there. I want him to be a part of that, even though he's on IR. Like, he's a part of my roster. So I think anybody that's on my roster.
We can each protect 2.
Yes.
We can each protect 2.
Yep.
And done. Done and done.
Deal.
There you go. All right. There you go.
Moving along here. That's well done by you guys. All right. We have less than 10 minutes to go.
Come on, Washington professional football team.
We are going to rip through as many of these
Cover first, win later. That's all I'm asking.
Stephania, we begin in Tampa, where the Bucs have plenty of wide receivers, but one of them is banged up. It's Chris Godwin.
Yeah, although, he got through the game pretty well, considering he was playing still with pins in his finger. According to Chris Godwin, he doesn't know how many. And wearing a specially devised glove, still able to function well enough. So no worries about Chris Godwin's status.
Matthew, it's really interesting if we look at the Bucs wide receivers that we all have them ranked the same in terms of the order. Chris Godwin, the clear number 1, Mike Evans number 2, Antonio Brown number 3. Would you concede that this is dart throwing until we get a better sense of how this group actually shakes out on the field together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, we have some stuff to base it on. We have not a lot, but a little bit, in the sense that Mike Evans, forgetting Antonio Brown, but when Chris Godwin has been active this year, Mike Evans has been inconsistent, right? He hasn't had a lot of, maybe he scored a touchdown, but he hasn't had huge fantasy games. His fantasy production is definitely much less with Chris Godwin on the field than without this year. Now you add Antonio Brown. So you can automatically say, like, okay, Mike Evans, like anything can happen, but if we're playing the odds here, the odds are that Mike Evans doesn't have a great game here. And we do feel like Godwin has the most connection here. Antonio Brown, again, a little bit rusty, still trying to get on the same page with everyone. Maybe he doesn't play the full complement of snaps that Godwin and Evans are going to. So that's how we have them ranked. We have them Godwin, Evans, Antonio Brown. But if you're saying, like, do you have a really strong feeling? You don't. Because, by the way, it's Tom Brady. He's going to throw it to the open guy. We don't know. He's going to spread the ball around, which he always does. Cut to us talking on Monday about another big game from Scotty Miller. Like you just don't know, right? I mean, it could be a Gronk game. Like, they have so many weapons. Keep in mind, by the way, that Carolina is one of the worst teams in the NFL in terms of allowing running back receptions. So this could be a big Leonard Fournette game. Like, yes, if you're asking, like, we have a little bit here, but it is certainly dart throwy territory for us. So I can imagine chances are you don't have multiple of these guys on your roster. And so the question for you, I think a bigger question is, it's like, we can rank them or whatever, but I don't think many people are like, I've got Godwin and Antonio Brown, which one should I choose? Chances are they have one of these guys, and are you starting a Bucs wide receiver? And I think sort of. Obviously, it depends on what options you have. Check our rankings, but I'm all in on Tom Brady's not having 2 bad games in a row. Tom Brady's going to come out, and again, like, I'm just throwing and we have some stats about what he's done after a single-digit fantasy game, but whatever. I'm just telling you, Tom Brady ain't having 2 bad games in a row. He just isn't. And not this year, not with that team. Feel bad for the Panthers, who have struggled defensively recently. They started out hot, and last couple of games they've shown some cracks there in the defense. So I think Brady has a big game. I think at least some of those guys have big games here. So it depends what you have, but in essence, if you have one of these guys, I'm probably starting him and hoping for the best.
Other side of this game is DJ Moore and the Carolina Panthers, who, weird one, because coming into the season, it's not like DJ Moore is like a veteran who's sort of clinging to the last bits of skill he has. He was an ascending young player and a good offense. And this year, the offense is still good. It's just that DJ Moore has not been. He was wide receiver, 83 last week, 82 last week. Matthew, Robbie Anderson, the only must-start Carolina Panther wide receiver now?
Yeah, I think so. Look, it's going to be hard to – it's so hard. Look, I have DJ Moore at 31, wide receiver 31. He made my hate list this week. Last 2 games, he's had a 14% target share. He's had 4 receptions the last 2 games.
It's weird.
So when they get into the red zone, wherever Teddy Bridgewater's looking, it ain't towards DJ Moore. They've had 32 red zone targets this year. 3 have gone to DJ Moore. 3 of 32. He's just and by the way, not a great matchup, obviously, with Tampa Bay. They allow the 11th fewest wide receiver 11th fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, the 6th fewest yards per catch to wide receivers. Now, Carlton Davis showed up on the injury report this week, so if he were to miss, that obviously certainly hurts that secondary. But still, not a great matchup. He's not getting used a lot. He's certainly not a huge option to potentially score. So, I mean, I think he's a risky wide receiver 3 or 4. Again, I am at wide receiver 31 this week.
Adam Thielen makes the hate list for you this week against the Bears on Monday night, but really hard for me to envision him not being in your lineup. But how about Justin Jefferson, Matthew, the wide receiver 2 for the Vikings? Should he be benched this week?
Again, sort of depends on your options. I'll just tell you, I have Thielen at 17, which is lower than I normally have him, but I agree with you. Hard to imagine that you have somebody better than Thielen in terms of the kind of target share he's likely to get. So I'm as a lower end a wide receiver 2. I have Jefferson at wide receiver 30. So I certainly think you could consider it, okay? I mean, the fact is that Justin Jefferson, the last 2 weeks, it's been all Dalvin Cook. And so Chicago, which is just so good in terms of how they defend it, they allow the 2nd fewest catches and the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers, the 4th fewest yards per game. So, I don't know. I'm nervous about this passing offense based on the matchup with Chicago and the fact that they have had success just going crazy Dalvin Cook. Like the Vikings have turned their season around last couple of weeks, and the way they've done it is just by letting Dalvin Cook. See what I did there?
Dalvin Cook. Well done. You had that
Thank
one
you very much.
Stored up for quite some time.
I'm not the only one to do that one. But how do you feel about Jefferson and Thielen this week?
I've got Thielen as a top 20 play. I've got Jefferson at 25. Part of that's because we've got a few notable teams on bye this week, so a little bit more optimistic than you, Matthew, but back-to-back bad games for both of these players. I get it if you want to bench one of them in a very difficult matchup. Still love the upside, though, for both of them, as I do for both the Rams and the Seahawks wide receivers, provided they all play on Sunday. We know that Cooper Kupp a little bit banged up, but Tyler Lockett in sort of a weird, typical Tyler Lockett year, right? He goes up, he goes down. He has 4 finishes as wide receiver 50 or worse. All those have been in the past 5 games. He's also got 4 top 20 finishes this season, including 2 weeks as wide receiver 1. Flip a coin this weekend. Where do we land with Tyler Lockett?
You're starting him, and here you're starting him. And by the way, you're starting him every week. Like, we should never talk about Tyler Lockett, and I'll tell you why. Because he's the thing with Tyler Lockett is like what we sort of talked about at the top of the show with Nyheim Hines. They're obviously very different players, but the fact is Tyler Lockett's one of these guys that you have to put him in your lineup, and there's going to be some bad weeks and there'll be some awesome weeks, and you're not going to be able to guess when they are. Certainly, considering that he plays the slot, and they've used Jalen Ramsey all over the field this year. But if there is a shadow situation, you figure Ramsey is more likely to shadow Metcalf than Lockett based on where they play. But regardless, it doesn't matter. There's no analysis here. If you have Tyler Lockett, you're starting him every week, and you're hoping for the best.
Yeah, I think that's succinctly and well said. Yeah. Let's get we're going to get to some fill-in wide receivers in just a moment. We are very pressed up against it right now. But first, the rising generation of NFL superstars have been dropping dimes and creating in space for years, way before they got to the league. Now it's your turn. Create your own highlight reel with X Factor abilities and innovative new skill stick controls. Swag out and win in style in new backyard football-inspired mode, The Yard. Celebrate your style, showcase your creativity, and rise to fame in a way that only you can. Go all out in Madden NFL 21, available now.
Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do. And I'll bet it can be real hard work. But you know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. And it's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around the house. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Couple of fill-in wide receivers this week.
Wow, Field, come on!
Nope, all good.
Wow.
I'll bet. All right, couple of fill-in wide receivers for this week.
So close.
Yeah.
So
he did it on the day you weren't here, Matthew.
Of course he did. Of course he did.
Couple of fill-in wide receivers for the week. T. Higgins, we talked about him already this week. He makes Matthew's love list this week. Excuse me, does not make the love list, but still, he's a top 20 consideration for all of us against the Steelers. At least 5 targets in every single game so far for T. Higgins, who's pacing for nearly 1,000 receiving yards. He has looked the part. And this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, very, very good. But in terms of pure fantasy football points allowed to opposing wide receivers, nearly a bottom 10 defense. Maybe a better matchup than most realize for T. Higgins on Sunday.
Yep.
Same thing here with Sterling Shepard, who the Eagles are about mid-pack against wide receivers this season. That's a breath of fresh air after so many years of struggling to defend opposing wide receivers. But how about this? Sterling Shepard has in 3 games since missing a month due to his toe, has 8+ targets. It's pretty clear that he has emerged as the number 1 wide receiver for the Giants. Maybe he's not emerged there. He's just always kind of been there when he has been on the field. Couple more names here, Matthew. Brandon Ayuk, who in 2 games prior to missing Week 9 when he was on the COVID-19 list, was wide receiver 8 with 40.6 points. Remember, really good in that final game before going on the COVID-19 list with over 100 receiving yards. Still no Deebo Samuel this Sunday for the 49ers, perhaps back, as Stephania said, after their bye. And then finally, Jerry Jeudy showed some major signs last week, looked the part. Incredible route running on display against Atlanta. Not quite as good of a matchup this weekend against the Vegas Raiders, but he's led the NFL in air yards in consecutive weeks.
Before you jump on Jeudy, I just want to say that he has a shoulder contusion, didn't practice Wednesday, did a little bit Thursday. Vic Fangio said he wanted to see how he responded to practice on Thursday before determining what he would do on Friday and seeing whether he'll play.
Okay, there you have it. So we'll see whether he plays. Follow Jeff_Legwald for, or maybe it's Legwald ESPN on Twitter. Just go find Jeff Legwald on Twitter to get all the information you need to know about the Broncos.
Jeff Legwald does a great job. But I will say, if he's healthy and playing, Jerry Jeudy going to have a big break out of the second half. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot, like we talked about Michael Pittman. I think you're going to see a lot of these rookie wide receivers have big second halves, and Jeudy is right there.
Yeah, his quarterback play has been a little bit up and down, as we know, with Drew Lock. But for whatever reason, Drew Lock has been really good in the fourth quarter of games of late.
Very quickly, last thing here. Tom Withers with the Associated Press tweeting this out very recently. NFL spokesman on Brown's situation, quote, "No change to the status of the game. The goal is to test, isolate the individual, conduct contact tracing, and stop the spread of transmission amongst the club." So as of now, game still scheduled to be played between the Texans and the Browns.
We will continue to follow along here. There you go. Jeff_Legwald is what Kyle tells me about the great leggy. One more thing before we say goodbye. Cool moment here in sports. I just got a note on this. How about this? The Miami Marlins have hired Kim Ng as their general manager.
Finally.
Becoming the first female GM and highest-ranking woman team executive in the major leagues.
She has deserved this opportunity for years, and I'm glad that a team finally took advantage.
Spent time with the Marlins. Was she previously with the Giants? Excuse me. Spent time with the Mariners. Spent time with the A's as well. So really an historic moment here for females in sports, Stephania. As a trailblazer in the world of sports broadcasting yourself, I'm sure you can appreciate just the gravity of this incredible moment in MLB.
Huge, and so well deserved. I believe she was with the Dodgers at some point too. I may be wrong, but she is a brilliant mind, and everyone in the industry knows it. And this is an opportunity that she has worked for years for.
And by the way, the Marlins, a very, very compelling and competitive team this past year. Good days are ahead down there for the Miami Marlins. Good days are hopefully ahead for you and your fantasy teams on Sunday. We'll give you the final word. Fantasy football now, 10 a.m. Eastern time on ESPN2 with all the latest on injuries, updates, news, projections, long shots. You need it. We have it. For Matthew, Stephania, Daniel,
Alex Smith.
Field. Talk to you guys
start
on Monday.
Since 2018.
Check out Love Hate on ESPN. Peace out.
He's Matthew